So there's no discussion on the agenda for the coming election. Was that last month?
It was.
Okay, that's what I thought. I think I was doing something. I wasn't able to make it.
We had to get it before ballots went out.
Ah,
And if anyone missed the deadline for mailing your ballots and has passed, so make sure you drop it off at a ballot box or vote in
Oh,
person.
that's good.
actually, that's not entirely accurate. If the ballots are received on election day or before at City Hall, they still get counted. That's something I tried to straighten out before they kicked me off of the Ward 4-7 group.
Good to know. Thank you.
Renegade.
But the mail is slow. But in town, I think it'd be okay.
Hello, can we come in?
Sylvia, you are.
Sylvia.
You're in.
You're in.
If you turn your
Start the video, right down there, start video. Start video? There we go.
I
All
don't know why
right.
it didn't start, but there you are.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Sylvia.
Hi.
That was me logging in on a second device. If you could let me in.
I did, James, because you had James's name. So
Yep, that's perfect.
That's okay. I'm gonna turn the overhead on.
Sylvia, do you want to hit? Oh, there we go. Never mind.
Emma, remind me of your assistant's name.
What's your name, assistant? What's your name?
Ruby.
Yeah, Ruby.
Hi.
She was trying
Hi,
to get the
Lily.
baby back. Jenna, what's your baby's name again?
Lillian.
Lillian. Hi, Lillian. I know, waving. I have another one who's a little bit older than you, who's going to bed right now, Lillian.
She'll be going to bed soon too. Karen.
Lillian's was her presence was requested.
Ah,
Bye.
specifically whenever I say NPA, either for wards 2, 3, or 4, 7, she's like, I'm coming up. I want to watch.
Oh.
Hey, great.
Mhm. All right, folks, it's 7:02. Shall we just begin?
Okay.
So I'm going to kick us off.
Yep.
Welcome to Wards 4 and 7 NPA. My name is Matt Hurlbert, and I will start off with ground rules, and then we'll go to the little round robin where we all announce ourselves. Basically, we want to be polite, listen to others speaking, respect the agenda and the process. We want you to share your opinions politely, treat each other respectfully, have your questions prepared, as this is a forum of questions and sharing. And we just want to remember that in this digital format, you really need to be aware of whether or not your microphone is on. And if you're not speaking, please look in the bottom left corner of your screen and make sure that you are muted. You want to see the red line through the microphone. Otherwise, we can hear your television and your cat and your dog and everything else just a little bit loud. So we will start by going around the room and introducing ourselves. I'm just going to go down through my little boxes that I've got, and I'll announce your name and let you. So I see Eric.
Hi, Eric Corbman, Ward 4 Steering Committee.
I see Jeff.
Hi. Hello, Frank Bozak, Ward 4. My wife Bridget will be joining a bit later.
Excellent. Jeff Clark.
Jeff Clark, Ward 4 Steering Committee, and Michelle Clark.
Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Durfee. I'm in Ward 7.
Jeff Comstock.
Yes, Jeff Comstock, Ward 7 Steering Committee member.
Robert.
I'm Robert Bristow Johnson. I'm Ward 7.
Jenna.
Good evening, Jenna O'Donnell, Ward 4 Steering Committee member.
Sarah.
Sarah Carpenter, Ward 4, City Councilor.
Sylvia,
You're muted, Sarah, or Sylvia.
might be able to- Can you unmute Sylvia? There you go.
Yeah, Sylvia Knight, Ward 7.
Bob Wright, Ward 7.
Thank you. Kendra,
Hi, everyone. Kendra Sowers, Ward 4, and the school commissioner for the North District.
and Emma,
Hi all, Emma Mulvaney Stanek. I'm a state representative for Chittenden 6-2, which is the southern portion of Wards 4 and 7 and the west side of the Old North End. And this is Ruby.
hi Ruby, Al,
My name is Al Bellucci, and I am in Ward 7.
Carol. You're muted, Carol.
Hi, this is Carol Odie, and I am Ward 4, and I'm a state representative for District 6-1.
Keenan,
Hi, Keenan Christensen, Ward 7 and candidate for North District City Councilor.
Lindra,
Lindra Mordyke, Ward 7.
thank you. Liam,
Hello, I'm Liam, the CEDO liaison. I live in Ward 1.
Bridget. Hope I said that right.
I'm Frank Bozak here for Bridget. She'll be joining a bit later.
Yep, you said that. I missed that. Chi,
Oh, there we go.
Oh, sorry. I'm Chi Wong. I'm in Ward 4.
awesome. Lauren, you're muted, Lauren.
That is town meeting TV, so they just may not.
Oh, it is. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Steve,
Stephen Hamlin, Ward 7.
Chris,
Hey all, Chris Bear, Ward 7.
Alexander,
Alexander Stith, Ward 7.
and Marcella.
Maricela Constantino, Ward 7.
Excellent. And I don't see any new faces on my screen. Have I missed anyone?
I think Lee just came in. I just admitted her.
Okay. Yep, I see her. She's connecting. Lee, if you could announce yourself, you're the last to do so.
Lee Terhune, Ward 4.
Anybody else? I think that's everybody. And I'll just remind everybody, we've chosen as an NPA to use this format, which is a personal Zoom format, and it allows us to do what we just did and interact. And it's the next best thing to being together and in person, and it's much more interactive, but it does have its faults. So we will do our best to not allow faults, but we're ready to move on. We have a moment for announcements, if anybody has an announcement to make. You may unmute yourself and speak up.
Oh, hi. I just want to make sure that two things going on this weekend, that the BHS Booster Pride is doing a food collection at the shopping center, the north end of the shopping center from 9 to 3. So bring your goods down, and as always, cash is accepted, or you can donate online. They wanted to do that because we probably won't be collecting a lot of food goods at the polls, since we won't be at the polls. So in lieu of that, bring it down. You can bring it to the polls, but they're trying to do a big thing on Saturday. And also let neighbors who may be interested, there's a food distribution at the Champlain School at noon on Saturday while supplies last, and anybody in need is welcome to go down there and get those foods. So thanks.
Anyone else? Going once.
Hey, Matt.
Yes.
I wanted to nominate Chi Wong for the steering committee. And if someone could from Ward 4, Jenna, maybe you could second that
I
nomination.
second that, yes.
And we welcome you, Chi, to the steering committee.
Hooray.
Recent
you.
transplant
I'm
from San
excited.
Francisco, and family has brought her to the area as well. So we're glad you can join.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to meet all my neighbors and also make some friends because I don't have any yet. So yeah.
Great. Welcome.
Won't take long at all.
I guess I would also remind everybody of the raise hand function. So the steering committee members will be keeping an eye on the participant list. So if you want to, raise your hand, ask a question, make use of that function. And I believe it should show up in the corner of your picture too. So we'll be watching for it.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeff. So we'll move to elected officials. I see some familiar faces on my screen. And Sarah, would you like to start, or Carol, would you like to start?
I'm happy to start if you'd like me to.
Please.
Okay, let me grab my, okay. So I thought I'd catch you up on what's happening with water quality. Vermont uses water quality standards as the foundational tool in its efforts to restore and maintain the health and proper use of its surface waters. And these standards are codified in the Clean Water Act, and they're approved by the Environmental Protection Agency. They are used to assess the quality of water for drinking, swimming, fishing, boating, and habitat function. We have a bill, and it's H-108, and that bill will clarify the longtime interpretation and practice that Vermont's water quality standards apply to all surface waters, including rivers, lakes, ponds, and very importantly, to wetlands. The bill also updates the state's Clean Water Act Section 401 provision to help the state better manage large projects that may discharge to Vermont surface waters, including projects subject to a federal permit or license, such as an interstate energy project. So this is a very important bill, and we're hoping that this will pass and be signed by the governor. Next is the promoting forest health and biodiversity. The Natural Resources Fish and Wildlife Committee is developing strategies to protect forest health, including initiatives to support and enhance wildlands and intact forests. Wildlands is a new designation here. Protecting the biodiversity of our forests is essential, and we're facing a moment in time when forest fragmentation, habitat loss, and the loss of connecting habitat, and the introduction of invasive pest and plant species are severely impacting our wildlife, diminishing the diversity and native species of the wildlife populations. And biodiverse forests protect our wildlife, store precipitation during severe weather events, and are a cost-effective means of sequestering, absorbing, and storing carbon. And the committee is looking at how our neighbors in New Hampshire and Maine are supporting wildland conservation. I myself have been to a couple of national talks on that and will continue my work there.
Thanks, Carol. Should we move to Bob?
We certainly can. Thank you. Government operations is like all over the map. I just picked out a day of our agenda. We started by talking about reapportionment because the feds have notified us that census data is going to be really late. So we have to figure out a new way to get into starting that process before we really have any information. We're going to use GIS estimated data, which I suspect is probably going to be wrong because it's old and so many people have been moving into all this construction that's happening in Chittenden County that I voiced an opinion that maybe we should back off on that a little bit because we have no idea how reliable the data is going to be. Then we went immediately thereafter into a discussion about candidate expenditures on childcare when you're running for office. Prior to this point, there was no provision for people that have kids to be able to say, I'm going to write this off to the campaign, basically, because there's nothing better than face-to-face communication. You can stay home and sign postcards, or you can go out and meet with voters. It seems like a pretty logical thing to do. After that, we jumped into who gets copies of the laws when we make them, because existing statute says they're supposed to be sent free to libraries and things like this. And everybody in every state in the nation is supposed to have access to something. That didn't really make sense. Talked about that for a little while. Then we jumped over to adding staff to the office of the Director of Racial Equity. There's one person in that office that has legion tasks, and every time I think she turns around, she gets 5 more. So we were talking about adding a data analyst and some other support person to the office. And that was just the morning session. Then we came back in the afternoon and did another whole gambit of little snippets of stuff. All of this involves 2 or 3 witnesses coming in, getting 5 minutes to talk about something, and then moving on. The most significant thing that we're doing, though, I think, is tackling the issue of the reapportionment, because it's really going to impact us here in Burlington and here in Chittenden County. So I really hope we're going to get it right, and going to try to do as much as possible to make sure that happens. Then we elected a sergeant at arms and threw out ballots for UVM trustees. It's a really busy time. I actually think Carol, Emma may agree or disagree, but since we're staying at home and doing this Zoom thing, it almost seems like people are thinking you can be 3 places at once. And it doesn't work that way. So I find myself on 2 computers at once trying to go be in 2 different meetings. It's really weird, but it's still fun. Questions?
Can I ask a question, Bob?
You certainly can. It'll cost the regular $2 though.
All right, I'll send you the money. So it's going to be about the redistricting. There is this portion of Ward 1 that's in the legislative district that's essentially the city of Winooski.
Yeah.
And there's another town that's south of us called Rutland, Vermont. And their life is much easier than ours because their legislative districts and their city wards are the same exact lines. But we can't exactly do that when we have a legislative district that straddles a city boundary. And so what I'd like to just leave a seed in your head that when the nitty-gritty dirty redistricting happens, if people can pay some attention to the city lines and what the city will decide separately what those city wards are, but if they straddle the city line with any legislative district, then it's going to be impossible for us to choose to have our wards coincide with the legislative districts like they do in Rutland, and which makes their life easier. So it's just something to keep in mind when the lines get drawn.
Yeah, and as you well know, because you've been involved in this stuff, it's ruled by the numbers.
Yeah, I know, but numbers get fudged a little bit. There's that 10% thing.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, but I mean, like every time Hal introduces himself, he's Hal Colston from Winooski and a little bit of Burlington. So
yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Down by Riverside Ave.
Yeah.
Well, if we do get a straddling of the city, then all bets are off on the city redistricting, because we'll just do it the way we did. And what we did last time, I ended up being the one drawing the map, is we made it so that it had as little change as possible for the existing 7 wards. Now there's 8 wards. But if we don't straddle city boundaries, we could throw that to the wind and do something completely different, like adopt the legislative districts as our wards. And that might make life easier. So I'm done.
Thank you. Lee has a question. Lee has nice hair.
Bob, thanks. Bob, you said that you hope that it's going to affect us a lot and we hope we do it right. I'd like to know what's the big effect on us, and are the Senate districts is the Senate race going to change because they're not all coming from, you know what I'm asking.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what's the big impact and how do we do it right?
There's two different questions, I think, Lee. The first one is, what's the big impact? And I think, Cambrian Rise is going to be a big impact, but it's not going to be something that's taken into consideration because it's going to be an after the fact thing. A lot of the building there is going to happen in the next census period. But, we've had a lot of people move in to the new North End. Every component of Burlington is expanding in some degree. So I don't have a prediction. I suspect our lines out here are going to change a little bit. But again, it's all going to be in the numbers.
Yeah, but aren't you talking about the legislative districts, not the wards?
Yes.
I'm asking you about the legislative districts. How are the legislative districts going to change? And what's the big impact there? And how does it affect the 6-member Senate delegation?
The 6-member Senate delegation is going to change because there was a statutory change last time, I think, that sort of dictated it. How it breaks down is once again going to be depending on where the population centers of Burlington and South Burlington and Winooski. Winooski, I don't think has changed a whole lot because they're relatively confined in how much they can spread out. But when you look at all the residential development that has gone on, say at the corners that where the pink concrete truck is, that apartment complex, they've added 2 buildings recently. In South Burlington, out by Timber Lane, there's a whole new development project going in. I think the ramifications in Chittenden County and in suburban Burlington are going to be greater than we might suspect. I don't see things changing massively, but it wouldn't surprise me that Emma says, "Oh, I used to represent you," at some point in time, because that line might fudge around a little bit. Carol and I might have the same issue with, maybe we'll cross the river and go over into Colchester. Who knows? Little mystique. So I don't know. I just think that using the old data that is provided by the state that doesn't look at current real estate trends and things like that might lead us into an issue where we're underestimating change until the feds get their data to us, which isn't going to be for a while.
Thanks, Bob. Just in an interest of time, let's move on, if that's all right, and give Emma a chance.
Great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Ruby in the background. So she has agreed to be quiet. We'll see how this goes, just in listening. So I got some new slippers. She did, Ruby. Remember, we're gonna work on this together, okay? So I thought I would just start by mentioning a very quick pass by 2 of the most popular bills I heard about from constituents. And that would be the first it's numbered H171 if you want to look it up. It's the Child Care Affordability Bill that Let's Grow Kids has been advocating for. And it's a very big systems change kind of bill that's working on making affordability an essential pillar of trying to fix our childcare system. It also, I'm excited to see around the professional, trying to lift professional wages for early educators who in many cases are making pretty low wages in Vermont. And it's sort of a catch-22 because tuition, I will tell you, because my younger one is still in childcare, is really unaffordable for a lot of families in the state. So it's a really complex bill, but it has a ton of support. And it's spent a lot of time moving through the Human Services Committee, and it will come to my committee, House Commerce, to touch on a small piece that's related to workforce development. So it's moving. I think it's probably some version of it will pass this session out of the House, And so I'm pretty excited about that. And I know that's probably one of the top things I'm hearing from folks. The other bill I've heard mostly from folks about is H81, which is actually a collective bargaining bill, but it impacts school educators. So it's a few years ago, the state brought all the healthcare bargaining onto a statewide level instead of in local districts. And this bill went through the first bargaining round, if you will, and needed some technical fixes. And one of them, to make the system, I think, a bit fairer for support staff, these are paraeducators and cafeteria workers and bus drivers and whatnot, is it allows them to actually include other economic factors at the bargaining table. It doesn't change what people pay, it just changes the rules to allow bargaining to be a bit fairer for workers. So as someone who supports organized labor, I was pretty pleased that that passed the House and it's in the Senate. I thought I'd just wrap up on two other bills. One big bill's moving. It's kind of like a mini COVID relief economics bill this week in the House. That number is H315. There's a lot in that bill. There's a couple pieces my committee worked a bit on around another wave of business relief grants. I don't think the bill is perfect, but democracy is about compromise. But it's $10 million to move to businesses that either did not receive any COVID relief money through the federal and state programs that passed through over the last several months, or received pretty minimal amounts. And the reason I wanted to highlight that is that I know that women-owned businesses and BIPOC-owned businesses had some carve-outs in the last wave, although for BIPOC-owned businesses in particular, it was very hard for the state to find the BIPOC owners, business owners. We're working on that. There's another piece I'll just mention in a minute where we're trying to do better, just system-wise for the state to really support BIPOC businesses. But for this piece, we have some technical money earmarked within that $10 million to work on translation, so language access, technical support to help people who need to get their books in order to even apply, and a little bit of phasing in the money so that it doesn't all, dry up in the first week based on people, rushing their applications in, because there's a lot of economic need. Again, not perfect, but if people want to geek out on that one, you can let me know. The larger bill includes a lot of federal money pass through as well a lot of money is moving to housing folks without homes. It's going some stuff to mental health, some stuff related to the food bank, Reach Up. There's a lot of stuff in this bill which will help Vermonters. And I think we can still do more to help folks who are most still feeling the struggles of this pandemic. The last thing I'll wrap up on, back to BIPOC businesses, because I'm on the House Commerce Committee, so my life is a lot around business development and workforce development and economic development in general for the state, is that we really heard through testimony that BIPOC businesses, the state does not do a good job of tracking where they are, who they are, so they have trouble communicating and understanding what I think the needs of BIPOC business owners are in the state. And so one piece that the committee has already endorsed the concept of, and we're working out now the details, is helping to develop a network. So we're not sure what that is. It should really come from, I think, BIPOC business owners to define, but freeing up some resources to help stand up some sort of meaningful networking. So really allowing these businesses to come together, connect, network, help to advocate with the state on where the agency of commerce can really be more responsive and help to resource, help connect with state contract gigs that they could bid for, et cetera. So a lot there, but if you happen to know any BIPOC business owners in particular, please let me know, because I really want to, I've been talking to a lot of folks around Burlington, including at CEDO, to do this well. There's a lot to learn, and I think the first thing we know is that we don't know everything, so we're trying to really reach out. Thanks all.
Thanks, Emma. And we'll open to questions if anybody has any.
Yes, Matt, this is Jeff. Going back to Bob Hooper's comment about reapportionment, can you remind us what the variance standard is that, or the percent deviation that's allowed between districts?
Robert said, I deferred to his past history, 10% of the, usually you're looking at a particular number that's digested from all the existing and where you can go between that, but I think it's 10% of the average that you can go up or down.
Okay, thanks.
I think the largest one can't be more than 10% than the smallest.
Smaller one, yeah.
the smallest of them all. And then you guys are more complicated because you have multi-seat districts.
Yeah.
Sylvia, I see your hand up.
Yeah, excuse me. I wanted to ask Carol if there was a bill number regarding that forest biodiversity.
I do not have the bill number right here, but I can get it to you, Sylvia.
Okay, wondered if it had a bill number yet. Yeah.
It may not. I'll check on that.
Do you know anything about the bill H15 that your committee and House Ag Committee heard about sometime last week?
About what in particular?
It's about two herbicides, glyphosate, atrazine, and chlorpyrifos.
I have not seen that, but as you know, I've been working hard on glyphosate issues and doing that with the Lake Champlain Citizens Advisory Committee and also with you, with the city, so. But I'll check into that and get back to you.
I'm just curious.
It needs health and safety measures that met rigorous scientific standards.
Go ahead, Lee.
Ag bill, you say, Sylvia?
Just curious as to where the bill is going, but I can look it up on the web.
Okay.
See what's happening with it. Thank you.
Lee, I saw your hand go up. Go ahead.
I just want to ask our legislators to watch for H-172, which bans leg hold and body crushing traps. We got to do this. It's awful. It's awful what's allowed to happen out there to these animals. And Massachusetts has banned all trapping. It's banned in other places. Come on, Vermont. We got to do it. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, cruel is a good word.
I'm not seeing any other hands. With no other questions, let's bring it to Sarah and do some city council.
Okay. First off, I thought my colleague Franklin might be joining us tonight for his last, well, not his last NPA, but his last NPA as a counselor. But we've had a lot going on and he may have already gotten a better offer. So I just want to thank him for his service to the ward the last 2 years. It is a daunting task. We hear a lot from you. And so it keeps you very busy. So thank you, Franklin. Tonight, actually, we're going to have a presentation on City Place. And so I'm really going to defer talking about that. Jeff Glassberg, who's the city's consultant, will be speaking, as well as Jesse Beck from Freeman French and Freeman, who's doing some of the initial design work. But that clearly has been occupying a lot of our time this last month, as well as all of the things leading up to the election on Tuesday. I actually hope most of you have all voted, but we have 7 candidates for mayor, 7 ballot items. So it's really been a marathon run to get all of that out there and all of that information out to the various constituents. I'm hoping we have a little bit of lull, maybe in the next couple weeks, and then we'll be on to something new. And we really have, because of the ballot deadlines, there's a lot of the initiatives have been sort of tied up for the minute, and then we'll be looking at new initiatives. I actually have been spending personal time. I happen to also be the chair of the Vermont Rental Housing Advisory Board. We're looking at a few statewide issues around code enforcement, which Burlington luckily has its own department already. Most towns don't. But one minor detail in that has been conversations about keeping better track of short-term rentals, getting a short-term rental registry. And Burlington's moving on a parallel track. There is a joint committee between ordinance and the Planning Commission working as we speak. And I think in the next couple of months, we're going to see more initiatives around short-term rentals. So that's sort of something to to keep your eyes on. I guess I'm blanking at the minute about other initiatives. I think I'm glad to hear us talking more about and getting back on water quality. I know that's a significant issue to all of us, and particularly those of us in Ward 4 who live along the lake. So I'm hoping we can get more attention relative to that. And I'm happy to really answer any questions I can on any of the initiatives.
Thank you, Sarah. I have a question for the city council from someone that wrote in earlier. This is Julie Hathaway, and Julie's from Ward 7. And she said, could we ask our councilors to comment on the letter that was submitted to the council by Fire Chief Locke on January 19th regarding police staffing impact on fire department service delivery? And could you as councilors share the letter with your constituents, because it's really difficult to find it buried in the board docs?
I am personally happy to share it with anybody, and I do understand board docs is not the easiest venue. That's probably something we should work on. Essentially, the letter speaks to the fact that he is concerned that if the police headcount diminishes, that could affect their staffing and their need for accompaniment, for lack of a better word, on some of the calls that they go on. So it's really wrapped into the conversation around what's the appropriate headcount for the city. As you know, that was a divided issue. I personally think we're moving a little too fast on that. But the one thing we finally did, which was slow, was approve the consultant that we had agreed upon earlier in the year to do a full functional assessment of our department. Karen can probably speak some to that, but I'm grateful we finally got that out the door. It won't be done until April. And so we're going to see where that leads. I think, unfortunately, because of the mayor's race, we're just not going to see conversation for the next few weeks on revisiting this issue. We need to, I believe. We did approve, and I want to be clear on this, 7, I believe, unarmed community service officers and community service liaisons, and the hiring for that will start hopefully immediately. And then I think in a few weeks we need to revisit the other issues that we've got on our plate around that. If you want to pass my email on, I can't quickly locate that letter, but I'm happy to pass it on after I find it to anyone who's interested.
Thanks, Sarah. Any other questions for Sarah or City Council in general? I see no hands. Jeff?
Yeah, Matt, this is Jeff. Can I raise a point of order before we move on to the next segment? That Jeff Clark and Jenna nominated Chi for steering committee, but I don't think we took the opportunity to let the Ward 4 residents actually vote on that. So can we do that procedural step?
I think we could. Why don't we come back to that in just a couple minutes? Let's give Kendra an opportunity. And between Kendra and DPW, can I come back to that? Awesome. Don't let me forget because I'm distracted. So hearing no other questions, I'm going to go to you, Kendra.
Thanks, Matt. I'm going to keep mine short because you guys gave us a half an hour at the end of this meeting. We're going to talk about the ballot item. We're going to talk about the school budget. I will try to explain the school budget because it's always complicated and I know people have lots of questions. So I'm not going to talk about that now, but I will answer all your questions and go into great depth at the end of this meeting. We are very excited that the downtown high school will be opening on time next week for Thursday, for the first day of school for these high schoolers that really, it's been a long haul since last March. So it has been a big lift to get everybody moved over there. The teachers have been packing everything and the desks have been delivered. And so that has been great. Right now it's school vacation week, and people have been moving a lot during this vacation. So we're very excited about that, and we're really appreciative of everybody who has helped and volunteered. And this has been really a community effort to get the high school downtown. And I also want to thank our legislators once again for helping to get the money for the fit up for 3.5 million to get to help us to achieve that. So thank you to our legislators for that. So I think Commissioner Ivanchik is coming and joining it later in the meeting, and she's going to help me talk about the budget. And so that's, I think, all that I'm going to talk about right now. If anyone has questions, let me know.
Questions for Kendra? Raise your hand, speak up. Carol, you almost faked me out. I see no hands, so I'm going to go back and let's put the power of vote to Ward 4. Chief, forgive me, I forgot your last name. And this
Wong.
is Wong.
Yep.
So it has been put to task for Ward 4 to vote. So all in favor from Ward 4 that it's eligible to vote. Let us hear your yays.
Aye.
Yay. Aye.
I'm seeing lots.
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? I see a lot of good faces, but I see no nays, so I'm going to make the call that the yays have it. And officially now, Chi, welcome.
Thank you.
Excellent, you're welcome. So we are 3 minutes early for DPW, and I'm not seeing Jenna Olson present.
I'm here.
You are, I'm sorry, Jenna.
I let her in. She's here.
Yes,
Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry,
here.
awesome.
It's okay.
Jenna, are you prepared if we give you the baton 3 minutes early?
Yep.
Awesome. Do you need to share your screen?
Yes.
Okay. Of course you do. Bear with me. All right. I've made you co-host, Jenna. Did I mute you?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Awesome.
So my name is Jenna Olson. I appreciate you guys giving us the time tonight. I'm joined this evening by Jessica Lavalette, who is our customer care and finance manager. I serve the Water Resources Division as the Water Policy and Programs Manager. So we're coming back to you tonight following a COVID-related hiatus. We started doing this outreach in the fall of 2019. You may remember that we had come to one of your NPA meetings with a big table of information and educational materials to talk about the initial launch of this project. We were planning on coming back to all of the NPAs last spring. We had NPA meetings planned for March of 2020, and then a global pandemic hit, and we put a pause on the project. So we're back at it now, rebooting this project. We presented to Board of Finance, the counselors to varying degrees at different venues, the TUC, the DPW commission, things like that. And you guys are the last of our NPA tours to hit. So I'll go through, what our next steps are, but for tonight, our our intent is to go through, the impetus of the project, why we've been doing this, why we needed to do this, and then what the actual rate structure changes are proposed for the upcoming year. So the tension between our core values with the water division is a constant balancing act. We need sustainable funding in order to maintain the infrastructure that is necessary to provide clean and safe drinking water, to treat and manage wastewater and stormwater before it drains the lake. But if the cost of that service isn't affordable, then residents may not be able to access the water that they need for essential living purposes. So when we started this project, one of the first things we asked ourselves was, how much does it truly cost to provide water service in Burlington? Who's using that water, and are those users paying their fair share of the costs? Now, our distribution system has to be sized appropriately to provide adequate flow to all of our customers, but each of our customer classes is unique and doesn't place the same demand on the water system. The infrastructure to provide the basic level of demand for normal residential and commercial water usage is represented by that smallest inner circle that you see. Now, our pipes would be a certain size, and the fixed costs for the chemicals and electricity to run the pumps, all those things that are necessary to provide that clean, safe drinking water would also be finite. But what happens when we add things like watering lawns and gardens, peak demand when our industrial users and a bunch of residential users are all using water at the same time? Well, in that case, we can see that next middle circle, that our distribution system has to be that much larger in order to provide water for both that basic level demand and those extra capacity flows. Now, that final largest circle represents fire protection and how large our system needs to be in order to provide flow for all the private fire services in the city if needed. So all buildings have a water service to provide flow for domestic water. And that pipe is typically 1 or 2 inches in diameter. But a pipe that size, only 1 or 2 inches, wouldn't be adequate for most institutions, commercial and large multi-unit residential buildings that need fire protection. So they either need a separate larger service pipe to provide fire service and retain the small domestic service, or they have one incoming pipe that's sized large enough to provide fire protection, and the domestic water service is then tapped off inside and reduced down to the appropriate diameter for those basic level needs. Now, as we mentioned before, as the size of the pipes increase, so do the fixed costs necessary to treat and deliver the water. So going back to the original question, are all customers paying a proportional amount of the costs to provide their property with water? The answer today is no, because everyone pays the same rate, even though certain customer classes require a distribution network to be inherently larger, and they're the ones who benefit from it. So Jess is going to go through, like I was saying, the proposed rate and policy changes, and some of the specific impacts and the affordability programs that we're proposing as part of this project. And then I'll come back and talk a little bit about our next steps, and then we'll have some time for folks to ask questions.
Thank you, Jenna. So I'm here to discuss our proposed rate and fee changes. And as you can see here, we have 6 proposed rate and policy changes that are all considered standard best practice within the water utility industry. Additionally, these changes do support our goals of ensuring the affordability of water while improving the financial health, sustainability, and revenue stability of the funds. These changes are also meant to help ensure our customer classes are paying for services in a manner equitable to the burden they place on the system. The items in green reflect changes made to our proposal since last March in an effort to mitigate impacts on commercial customers while still maintaining affordability benefits for our residential customers. These changes are a direct response to the economic hardship caused by the pandemic. So the first one up here is fixed charges by meter size. We are proposing a fixed fee for both water and wastewater that escalates based on meter size, beginning with 5/8 inch meters up to our largest size of 6 inch. We have always assessed a fixed fee on meter size at 1 inch or larger, but this will be the first time since 1996 that 5/8 and 3/4 inch meters will receive one. This proposal is important because our current rate structure is entirely volumetric, which means our revenues can be significantly impacted by conditions out of our control, like a cold, rainy summer or global pandemic. Incorporating a fixed charge for all meter sizes will ensure a nugget of revenue that we can count on to provide stability for the funds. This type of rate structure is also viewed favorably when we need to borrow money and allows us to qualify for lower interest rates in some cases. Here in green, we see a modification from last spring where we were able to achieve a lower charge for most meter sizes by modifying the calculation basis and reducing the percentage of our cost recovery. The lifeline rate tier, currently, as I mentioned, we have a uniform rate structure where everyone is charged the same amount per 100 cubic foot, which is equivalent to 748 gallons. The introduction of a lifeline rate allows us to define the water needed for essential life activities as 400 cubic feet and charge less for usage under that threshold. So we chose 400 cubic feet because it's the median usage in Burlington, and in calendar year 2019, 54% of Burlington customers fell into that category. And as Jenna discussed, as we move to class-based rates, the strain each customer puts on our water system is inherently different, so it doesn't make sense to continue charging everyone the same rate. This change allows us to recognize that difference while still providing support to our residential ratepayers. We're proposing that all multifamily residential, mixed use, and commercial properties be charged at a rate that is a midway point between the two residential tiers. This does provide some relief because they're typically larger consumers and would actually pay more if eligible for that lifeline rate tier. Our previous recommendation did have mixed use and commercial classes at a higher volumetric rate, but you will see here, we've decided for the upcoming fiscal year to leave them at that lower rate to mitigate any pandemic impacts. We are also proposing a higher water rate for irrigation or cooling towers, but have allowed an exception for community-based gardening initiatives like BACG or the Intervale. As we move to fire protection charges, this change introduces a monthly fee for customers with a private hydrant or fire service that escalates based on the pipe diameter. Conceptually, this goes back to our cost of service analysis, where we are paying more to have a water system capable of serving should those properties need to use it. And as you can see in green here, we've decided to phase in the fee over 5 years instead of assessing the full fee in year 1. The Water Resources Assistance Program, or REP. This is the change that I'm personally most excited about because it has the potential to make a real difference in the lives of our customers. We are proposing to waive the fixed meter charge for residents of single family properties who can demonstrate they are at or below 185% of the federal poverty level. And here is a modification from spring where we've expanded the eligibility to include any senior citizens living in single family homes, along with nonprofit housing developments providing affordable or senior living units. Next slide, Jenna. So these are the current and proposed rates as they exist right now. As we can see, the fixed charges are assessed on all meter sizes here. The 5/8 fee is currently proposed to be $3.34 for water and $4.68 for sewer. As we move down to the volumetric rates, we can see the single family residential volumetric rate was previously that uniform $4.44, but we've got that 2-tier structure now. So the tier 1 rate is for usage under 400 cubic feet, so from 0 to 400, and will be $2.49 per 100, which is a significant change from where it is now. It's much lower. The tier 2 rate, which will be applied on consumption over 400 cubic feet, will be $6.23 per 100. And we will be able to apply this rate structure to duplexes, but only if each unit has a separate meter. As we mentioned earlier, multifamily residential, mixed use, and commercial properties won't be eligible for that tiered structure, and we're proposing to move their rate from $4.44 to $4.36 per 100 cubic foot. The irrigation rate is currently a bit higher than the uniform rate, but it'll be increasing substantially to $7.48 per 100. This reflects the cost of providing service and sends a pricing signal to conserve water when use is not for basic needs. The wastewater volumetric rate is proposed to go from $6.20 to $6.08 for everyone. The rate's the same for all customer classes because volume is not a primary cost of service driver for wastewater. However, the strength of wastewater is a driver, which is why we can assess a monthly surcharge when an industrial user exceeds the waste strength set by city ordinance. If we move to the far right column, we see that private fire charges are proposed for the first time and they escalate based on size. Again, these rates are monthly and they reflect a 20% of the intended full charge as they're being phased in over 5 years. The combined water resources bill also contains 2 other charges not included on this table you might be familiar with. The stormwater has been around since 2009 and it's assessed based on property type, with single family, duplex, and triplexes home being charged a flat fee and all other properties directly charged for the actual impervious measured. The stormwater rates are proposed to increase by 5% across the board next fiscal year. And the water bill also contains a franchise fee charge that we're required to pay to the general fund according to city charter. It's currently set at 3.5% of water wastewater sales. Next slide, Jenna. Excuse me. Customer is max. So as part of the rate study, we created a model that utilized consumption data from calendar year 2019 to calculate the estimated financial impact for each account. However, the model is just a projection, so it's important to remember that future bills will vary based on a variety of factors like actual consumption, the final approved rates City Council will vote on, and eligibility for assistance programs. So in order to help customers better understand how they might be impacted by the proposed changes, we have developed an account impact summary request form that can be filled out online. This will allow us to discuss why a specific bill might be higher or lower, but also gives customers an opportunity to learn about our available credit and review programs and the related eligibility requirements for them. Initiatives like applying for RAP or a stormwater credit, along with requesting a meter sizing review or implementing some conservation strategies, can all be considered and completed in advance of the proposed rate changes. We will also be including data on post-COVID consumption trends in our responses because the pandemic has significantly altered how water is being used. We've seen an average increase in residential consumption of about 10% and a decrease on the commercial side of about 30% when compared to the previous year. Next slide. So this is a little bit more detail about RAP. It will be the very first ratepayer assistance initiative for water resources. We intend to leverage existing state and federal benefit programs as our qualifying criteria in order to limit the administrative burden associated with developing our own income verification program. This means that ratepayers who already participate in programs like Lifeline or 3 Squares, Crisis Fuel, SSI, or rental assistance through Section 8 can apply and simply use their proof of enrollment in that program to be qualified for RAP for 1 year. Or in the case of senior citizens, providing proof of their age will meet that eligibility threshold. I'd like to mention here that we're also open to adding additional qualifying programs to the rate assistance list and would encourage feedback about other initiatives that we could add to expand RAP's reach. One of the more difficult challenges we face with implementing an assistance program is how to provide relief to renters who don't receive a water bill. Ultimately, there is no way to guarantee that a landlord would pass any savings along, and we're certainly not alone as most water utilities are struggling with how to reach tenants in a meaningful way with an assistance program. We may not have the answer to the problem today, but we certainly aren't giving up and hope to address it with future initiatives. Speaking of future initiatives, we have also begun developing some additional assistance programs that address infrastructure and conservation needs. These proposals include offering grant funding for condition assessments on sewer laterals, availability of no or low interest loans for replacement of water services or sewer laterals, rebates for installing appliances that conserve water, along with availability of real-time water data to monitor usage, and providing free tools to implement stormwater management practices like rain barrels. These won't be all ready to roll out right in July, but we're actively working towards them. And now back to Jenna, who'll go over our next steps and additional outreach.
Thanks, Jess. Like I was saying at the beginning, the outreach that we're doing has been attending the NPAs. We've gone to DBW Commission, the Board of Finance, and we'll be working on targeted notification to our customers with fire services, hydrants, and irrigation meters over the coming weeks. That will also be the period of time when we're meeting with our key community partners and our other large users. We will be hosting an open house public meeting for all ratepayers on April 7th. We'll start advertising that shortly. There will be an ad in 7 days. We'll be posting that to Front Porch Forum and to our Facebook accounts. And then we also maintain a pretty robust online presence at the link that you see above on your screen. That's where customers can review all of the presentations we've done to date and provide feedback via web forms and request an estimated account impact summary. Our continuous improvement process will be happening between roughly now and July. So that's when we'll be incorporating the feedback that we're receiving from all of our stakeholders, reviewing, validating, and responding to those impact summary requests, doing all of our ongoing QA/QC with the data, and making the required updates to our billing system, and then drafting our water resources affordability program policy and making any necessary ordinance changes to the Chapter 31 ordinance. We'll be seeking approvals from City Council and the Mayor between April and June of this year, and then implementation will begin hopefully July 1. So as of July 1st, these changes will become effective, and then they will be reflected on the August bills. So we do have time to take some questions. I know that some folks had questions about our COVID wastewater sampling as well. I'd prefer to answer questions about this first and foremost, but if we do have a little bit of time, I can take a couple of questions on that. I did talk to Jeff, and I'm more than happy to come back to the NPA next month and talk more about that COVID wastewater sampling process if folks are interested. But for now, we're happy to answer any questions.
I'm looking for hands. Anyone have questions?
You want to end the screen share so you can see better?
Yep. Hold on. This thing keeps popping
you.
up. Yeah. Stop share. There we go. Okay.
Much better.
There we go.
I can see more faces. Raise your hand, dance. I don't see anybody. Jen.
I was wondering, oops, I'm sorry.
So
Go ahead,
just
Jenna.
sent you a private message. Thank you, Frank. So I'll be following up with you separately, but I just want to say that's really exciting, the RAP program. So huge kudos to the city and for you for putting that together. That's really exciting.
We're very, very excited. There's a few other things I didn't get to talk about tonight that we're going to be doing. We'll present at the April meeting, but it's going to be really great for people. I'm very excited, and I will follow up with you. I saw the little chat.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Eric, did you have a question? Someone else had piped up? Bob?
You mean me?
Yes, Robert.
Okay, that's fine. So is the idea of going to this fixed rate structure to save expenses on the metering expenses, I imagine, isn't zero. And so we'd essentially be tossing the meters out and going to this fixed rate structures and not having to have the overhead cost of reading meters, essentially, whether we do it electronically or not.
Well, we'll still have the meters. The fixed charge is essentially to recoup some of the fees that we aren't now, and sort
So
of.
this is a charge in addition to our metered charge that's going to be on our water bill.
Yes, it's in addition to the volumetric. It is. Yep.
All right, I got it. I don't have a question left anymore.
Oh, okay.
I misunderstood the meaning.
I'm sorry, and I probably have been talking too fast at some of these, so I apologize.
But this is a fixed charge based on how big we are. That's going to be added to our metered charge of our consumption of water.
Yes, it's based on your meter size. Yep, that's how it'll go.
Okay.
I thought I saw one more hand.
Anybody else? I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
If I can jump in, you said that the commercial usage during COVID is down 30% and the residential, which is no surprise because more people are home, is up 10%.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to assume because one is down 30 and one is up 10 that we're 20% better. Do you have a stat on actual usage? Is the city needing more water or has it decreased?
We're decreased. Yeah, I haven't run the last couple months, but there was absolutely the dips and trends you could see not only with our production numbers, but with billable following the different stages of the emergency order as well. So overall, it's still down depending on where you are. Places like the university are still very much not where they were.
And is that a negative impact on the city if the city's not billing for the water they're providing?
Yeah, I mean, we had a hot summer, so that was actually, people do water more. There's, different larger irrigators that was a little bit helpful, but overall it's still down a bit. And I could certainly follow up with you about some more recent numbers by customer class if you're interested.
Yeah, I'm just curious. That's neat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I'm looking at my faces. Who else has questions?
Representative Hooper has his
I
hand
see
up.
Bob Hooper.
Thank you. So do we have one supply line that comes out North Avenue or is there more than, how do we get our water out here in the great.
That's a good
plan.
question.
There's a couple different transmission mains headed down North Avenue. The sizes, one is on the bike path, I know, and there's a couple on North Avenue. The diameters, I'm not quite sure of, but I could
So-
certainly find out.
It's not critical, but when Cambrian is fully developed, are we going to have pressure issues? At some
No,
point?
No, our
seems like-
engineering, so every time there's a new development or any sort of redevelopment project, they have to submit something called a capacity to serve request to our engineering team. So what that involves is our engineering staff looking at the capacity in both our wastewater and our water distribution systems and measuring that against the demand that a new development is going to put in and ensuring that we have adequate capacity to serve that development. So Cambrian Rise, well before they put their first shovel in the ground, had to obtain one of those capacity to serve requests to ensure that they weren't going to be placing an unnecessary or unreasonable demand on the system. They will have a private pump station for wastewater and will be constructing some offsets for stormwater management, but overall that development will not negatively impact water availability to anybody else.
Thank you. It's
Yep.
surprising considering the number of units that are going to be in there that it wouldn't have some impact.
Yeah.
Thank
Alexander.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you see the increase or the fixed cost and change to cost as a negative for driving more businesses in Burlington? Will it increase the cost of doing business in Burlington or negatively impact the ability for more businesses to be drawn to Burlington?
I don't think so, because right now we already have a fixed fee for meters that are size 1 inch or larger, and that encompasses almost every commercial property right now. And the fixed fee itself is going to be a little bit lower than what they're paying now, although we're reducing the consumption allowance in it. So it depends on the business, but I don't think it's going to be a game changer for anyone. For a lot of the businesses, they'll see, especially the ones that are closed right now or that they're reducing their consumption, it'll be a little bit less.
So the
than what
rate
they're-
change won't affect them, not just the fixed, but the rate change won't negatively affect people's perception of drawing business to Burlington, is the hope.
No, not in my opinion. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lee, I see your hand.
I got 2 notices today that Burlington's dumping wastewater into the lake. What's going on?
There was an issue at East Plant. It was a disinfection failure at our plant because a blower motor was reset, and there's going to be more detail about that on the website, but that was the issue. It was an issue to the Winooski. So.
I take it the East Plant is the one out here?
No, East Plant is the one on Riverside Avenue.
Riverside. And it was yesterday and today.
It was one issue. It was just that we had to report twice because we have to take samples at the time the issue occurs and then within 12 hours. And so we had to report it twice. It was only one issue though.
Any last questions?
Looks like someone might.
Can I ask? Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
This is slightly political. It has to do with one mayoral candidate. How would you feel about the efficacy of merging your department with Burlington Electric? Would that help things or would that make things like nutty?
That's a great question. I know at the office we have information about some previous efforts on that, and I could certainly follow up with you on the specifics. I think overall, we're always interested in looking into suggestions of, how we can best serve our customers and looking at the benefits and disadvantages of such a merger. So it's certainly something to think about.
There is one question in the chat, but Councillor Carpenter has her hand up as well, and then we'll address one in the chat.
We've got about a
It's
minute and
more
a
of
half.
a request for a future meeting, both for the folks in water, but actually for Carol as well. I'd love to see us have a meeting on kind of the combined city issues and state watershed issues. I find there's a lot of confusion, particularly around the blue-green algae problems and the Big Lake problems and the runoff from the Champlain Valley Basin, as opposed to sewer discharges. And it's a complicated thing that I need re-explained. There's a lot of finger pointing at time around, oh, it's Burlington's fault, but we have this big state issue that we've got to tackle. So it's just a request for maybe a meeting later in the spring focused on the relationship between Burlington's sewer plant and the Lake Champlain Basin issues.
Yes, I would be more than happy to come and do a larger presentation. We have a much bigger effort called our Integrated Water Quality Plan that is in process now. We will be doing more outreach on that as the spring winds down. So there was one quick question that came in the chat that was, how do the reports and results from the testing at the wastewater treatment plants inform actions related to COVID-19? What are the actions associated with higher levels of COVID detection? So really quickly, the two primary goals of that testing is to just provide more data of city level total infections over time, and then also serve as some sort of initial indicator of potential increases in infection rate, which then helps inform decision-making by the Vermont Department of Health, the City of Burlington's Emergency Operations Center, and other community stakeholders. So the important thing to keep in mind is that, those the testing that we're doing isn't actually detecting live virus. It's detecting the genetic material of the virus. So we're literally sampling for the virus's DNA in our wastewater. Just like, human DNA, just like we have DNA, viruses do too. They're living organisms. They have genetic material. And so that is actually what we're sampling for, is their DNA in the wastewater. And as those levels increase, we can, provide some sort of projection of when those infection rates may be spiking. So. Again, I would be more than happy to come back in April and talk a little bit more about that. It's a very, very interesting project. And our partner, Go Agua, has been really fantastic to work with. So.
Thank you so much. Oops.
Thank you guys, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
Jessica and Jesse, thank you very much for presenting.
Yep.
And in the interest of keeping on schedule, we're 2 minutes late, so we're going to jump to City Place. And I see in our audience, we have Jeff Glassberg, Jesse Beck, and Dave Harrington. So I will turn the mic over to you, gentlemen.
Sure. Can you hear me?
You can. And I've given you screen sharing ability if you need.
Yes, we will need that. So let me hit screen share. Can you see my screen now?
Not yet, Jesse.
Hey, William.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good. It's a little late for me.
Yeah.
What happened with ranked choice voting? How did KISS get in?
maybe while Jesse's queuing up, we could ask one of the other presenters just to give us a little background about where we're at.
Yeah, this is wasting time.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to get my Mac to operate at home.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you were on a Mac, because that's a little that's a little harder. Dave or anybody else want to?
Well,
We have Jeff Glassberg, the city consultant here, and obviously one of our owners and developers, Dave Farrington.
it's William Fellows here. I'm from Devonwood Investors.
Okay.
As well as Dave and myself, we maybe can say a few words. As you know, last night there was unanimous vote to approve the revised DA. We're slated, or we have in as a parallel process, we've gone to to Conservation Board. We've been to the DAB. Both of them passed us fairly unanimously, if that would be the case. And we are slated to see the DRB on March 3rd. We've been talking with DPW quite regularly in terms of issues to do with the new streets that were being proposed and some of the changes that have occurred since earlier in January, February of 2020. So currently, for those of you who are not aware of where we were in January, we had a number of public meetings in late January, early February. We presented the new design, which has changed somewhat since then, but it's essentially the same as it was back then. And here we go.
There we go. Awesome.
A miracle.
Jesse prevails.
All right.
Congratulations.
So you can see my screen. So the first stop is, I'm Jesse Beck, architect with Freeman French Freeman. And this slide will show you the design team and also the development team. And on the phone, you just heard from William Fellows from Devonwood, and Dave Farrington from Farrington Construction is one of the local partners, along with Scott Ireland and Al Senecal. The project, we're giving you a progress report on where we are in the process. And everybody's heard the good news of the city council vote last night. But we have gone up in front of the Design Advisory Board and the Conservation Board, who has moved the project forward for the DRB presentation on March 3rd, next Wednesday night. The project is very similar to the one that you have seen before. We are still maintaining the new streets of the New Pine Street and New St. Paul extensions. The north side is on Cherry Street and the south side is on Bank Street. Highlighted is 67 Cherry, which is currently the new home of the Burlington High School. Shall open up very soon. And to the east, you have the LL Bean and the mall block. Similar to before, we have a north building, which has public access to the parking garages on both the east and the west. It has garage entrances, which is a change from before. The garage entrances are off the New Pine and the New St. Paul. And you can start to see the south building to the east of 100 Bank with its own lobby entrance. And I think Jeff will want to come back to this to talk about the new streets and the Great Street program. This will summarize some of the major components and program of the building. The building is now primarily housing, 426 units of housing, including 88 affordable units. We have no more office building to the south, that's housing. We have reduced the amount of retail on the street level to 41,000 square feet. And the garage program has changed because of the changing planning and zoning requirements. We are now working with maximum build for parking and a zero requirement for housing. So we are going to be building 422 parking spaces in the center of the project and in the basement. We have 350 bike parking spaces. And we have short-term as well, which will be in the garage, covered. The project was over 1 million square feet prior, and now we've reduced, and I'll show you the size reduction. We're now down around 700,000 square feet. This diagram is a slice through the site in the block, going north to south, and ghosted behind in that gray area will show you the reduction or the previous height and mass of the project. So we are reducing the height of the building by 50 feet and bringing it down from 14 stories to 9 stories on the north and 10 stories on the south. All of these drawings can be found on the city's website. This also illustrates how the parking is inside the block and full length of the basement. And we'll show you that there's retail both on the Cherry Street frontages and the Bank Street frontages, which is the podium to hold up the housing. So this is without the ghosting of the previous project, illustrating the 3 levels of parking. The parking is completely covered in the center of the block. We're going to shift now to walk you through the floor plates of the building. And on the right is a diagram with a red line showing you what level we're on. But this is the basement level, which is mostly parking structure with the mechanical and storage spaces to support the project. Fully below grade of about 200 parking stalls. As we go up to grade, you'll see the new streets to the west and to the east. So the new Pine, using the Great Street models. And then entrances to the parking structure. The retail wrap, like I said, is around 41,000 square feet. This starts to illustrate the loading docks. We have loading docks to service the buildings on both the New Pine, New St. Paul, and to the south off Bank Street.
Is it gonna build around LLB? I don't understand that. So LLB is 2 levels.
As we move up the building, there's another level of parking before we get to what we call as the top of the podium, which is a structural layer. So we have basement parking, retail, more parking, and then the podium top. And at the podium top is where we begin the residential floor plates. And here you can clearly see the north building is a U-shaped plan, and it's really built in 2 pieces. You'll see a line down the center of the north building. So we have a northwest L shape against a northeast L shape. And to the south, you'll see the south building, which contains the community space as part of the development agreement, some roof terrace, and you'll see the core elevators that will bring you up to the rooftop observation deck, which we'll get to as we go up the building. in the corner, you'll see at 100 Bank Street. So we're going up the building, another level where we have the south building residential units, some green roof. We also have green roof over the parking deck, the U-shaped north building. And as we go up another level, you'll see the form-based code has certain dimensional requirements to reduce the mass of the building. So the building at this level is 75 feet wide. And we go up a level, it reduces back to 65 feet as a step back requirement to reduce the mass as we go up in height. And that residential plate goes up 4 levels before we get to the mechanical spaces. Each building has its own mechanical space and mechanical systems. Connecting the north U-shaped building is more green roof. We are planning on photovoltaic systems for the rooftops. On the south building, which is a 10-story building, the north building is a 9-story building. You'll see the public observation rooftop deck accessed off Bank Street and the yellow elevator cores. There will be a restaurant, full-service restaurant and kitchen. And if we get to the highest point, there's more photovoltaic. The mechanical space for the south building, and off to the left, you'll see the photovoltaic array above the mechanical for the south building. Now we'll run through a series of renderings to give you a better feeling for the street views, what the building looks like in materials and finishes, how it orients to the street. This is showing you the ghosted previous 14-story project and how we've reduced it in size. So there you have the 9-story north building. So this is a view looking down Cherry Street and the new St. Paul to the left, the LL Bean building. So you're looking south west. The project, similar to before, is primarily a red brick building with a salmon colored brick accent, glass storefront, and bay windows to break up the mass. And you can see the step back to reduce the height of the mass of the building. This view is looking southeast. So you'll see Cherry Street with the bus, the new Pine Street, and the 60-foot right-of-way between the Burlington High School Macy's building and our facade. You start to look down the new Pine Street and you can see the garage entrance and the loading dock. A closer look, looking down New Pine, so you start to see how 100 Bank influences the site. A glimpse of how New Pine goes underneath 100 Bank at grade. The retail will turn Cherry down New Pine. The bay windows, the step back, and the garage entrance. Jumping around to the south side of the site, this is the south building, which looks and feels different from the north U-shaped building. Here you can see 100 Bank to the west. The podium of the south building residential is a limestone, a warm limestone look with a retail on the first floor, public amenity space on the second floor. We are looking northwest, so you get a glimpse of what New St. Paul looks like running up towards the LL Bean building. And the next view gets you closer in, looking down Bank Street towards 100 Bank. The materials above, the limestone is on the podium, but as you go above and there's another step back, that will be a sintered stone, which looks and feel like Adair limestone, similar to what you see up at the UVM Medical Center. So that's a quick look at the floor plates, the site plan, and the materials, size and massing of the project, which will be in front of the DRB next Wednesday night. So we can go on to either questions or move on to have Jeff talk about the streets.
We've got about 5 minutes left.
I would suggest that if we go right to questions, that might be most useful.
Okay, that's a good idea. I only have a limited screen with screen sharing. I'm looking for hands.
Can we stop screen sharing so that we can see who's asking for
Yeah,
questions?
that might be easier. If someone has a question, please pipe up. Bridget?
Bridget, do you want to go?
You're
on mute, Bridget.
Bridget.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I found that very, very helpful. I have one question. At the very beginning, I think your first or your second slide, the presentation included the number of housing units, including 85 affordable housing units contemplated for the, I think the north building. But I also noticed that you said now will that number change? And under what conditions would the number change of housing units, in particular, any reductions in the number of 85 affordable housing units?
We have a commitment to meet 20% of the units that we build will become affordable. So that's where that 85 comes from. So that's the commitment, and that's what we're planning.
I think Bob was next. Bob Hooper.
Just a quick review. It looked like you have more units than you have parking spaces. Is that true?
That is correct.
Is that assuming somebody's not going to have a car in the winter, or what?
Well, what has occurred is in the prior project, we had parking requirements for housing, retail, and other uses in the building, which resulted in the car counts. Since then, the planning and zoning has changed to require that you build to a maximum. So we are limited to the amount of stalls that we can build in this project by planning and zoning. We feel
does that include the retail, Jesse?
Yes. So which are, yeah. So we feel that the maximum which we are going to be building will satisfy the project, and not everyone who will be renting in the building, as far as units, will have a car.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, did you have a question?
No, I'm just contemplating. And I think that's, Jesse brings up a good point, that in the downtown zoning, we have, irrespective of this project, are trying to acknowledge that certain developments will not be one-to-one parking. That the whole point is that certain numbers of tenants would live there without a car, and that tenants that want a car, the charge for the parking will be in addition to their rent, essentially trying to attract folks that don't have cars.
Are we assuming that all units are rental, or are there condominium for sale units?
you have to ask the developer. I'm assuming at this point in time, they are all rentals.
That was to the
Correct.
developer.
At this point in time, they are rentals.
Okay. Lee, I see your hand.
We lost some parking with when the space was when the mall was demolished. How does the parking, the public parking that was lost figure into all of this?
I would defer to Jeff on that one.
So I think the question is asking about the mall parking that was demolished, correct? And so that was available to the public, but it was not owned by the city. And so I believe, Team City Place, your parking plan in the design we just saw is responsive to current zoning requirements, including that retail space, correct?
Correct.
And I would imagine you're much heavier on residential now than the previous mall plan with.
Well, I mean, you keep talking about the residential parking, but what about public parking?
There's much less public building.
Well, yeah, this is a private development. The parking allocation is according to planning and zoning for the development itself. If we find out that we are not renting spaces to the tenants of the building or for the retail uses, that leftover parking will become open to the public for public use.
Robert, did I see your hand?
So these 85 affordable units, are they somehow distributed between the south and the north building, or are they all in one or the other?
They're distributed in the whole project.
Okay. Are they functionally different than the market units?
No, you will not know any difference.
Okay. That sounds pretty good. It sounds kind of like what New York City is doing with some of that. So then the only other question is about that space in between the two buildings where you have like a green roof. What does that look like? Is that like a plaza where people can walk, or is it just a roof? I don't understand what that is.
Sure. And we get a lot of questions about that because the developer is spending money to cover the entire parking structure, where a lot of projects like this, it's called a Texas donut, where the building is around and you look down onto parked cars. So in this one, we're going to go to the next step by putting a roof completely across it. A certain area will be green roof, which will collect rainwater. There will be some terrace for people to walk on. There will also be a screened-in area for mechanical equipment, because we do need roof area to put mechanical equipment, but it will be screened. And then the other rest of the roof will be like a rubber roof that you would see on any building. So it's kind of a mixture of surfaces and spaces.
But not an open plaza. It's just, you're saying some terrace, but people aren't just walking around that green roof or anything like
You
that.
can walk around the green roof. We green roofs are really for collecting water. They're not meant to be walked on.
But it's no trees. It's not, I don't know what a green roof is. I was wondering if it was like,
Okay. The green roof that I'm speaking of is it's a tray system. It's about 12 inches deep and it's sedum, so it's fairly flat, but it is green looking. You can see one out at the airport. We did a fairly large one out at the airport, and you can have walkways through it, but you don't want to have a lot of people walking on these plants. You can walk around the plants, around the green roof, and then there'll be more additional hardscape for people to walk on, but it will be limited.
But it's not like an attraction where
Actually,
people could
I
pay.
need to jump in, Robert, because we're 5 or 6 minutes over. I apologize.
Yeah, the public space for everyone to walk on is the observation deck on the top of the south building.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. And I hate to cut everybody off because this is a great conversation. But we must move on to the school board.
Thank you, Jesse
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
and Sarah.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you for all the information. Much appreciated.
All right, thank you.
And without further ado, I'm going to move to our final presenter for Burlington School District. I believe we have Kendra Sowers and Monica Ivancic. Ladies, will you need?
Matt,
Yeah.
could I just make one comment? If anybody in the audience wants any additional information or wants to, get a one-on-one preview of this, they can just reach out to us at City Place, and we're happy to meet with anybody. I see Karen's on here. We walked her through the Macy's project the other day, and we talked a little bit about City Place. But yeah, we're wide open for anybody to ask questions, and if they want to sit down and look through a set of plans or whatever, we're more than happy to do that.
Check out that Facebook page. It's a nice Facebook page.
I'm not sure what the Facebook page is, but
Somebody made one for you, Dave.
somebody did, yeah.
Be careful what you wish for, Dave, because we might just take you up on that.
But yeah, I think there's an inquiry page on our website, which is www.cityplaceburlington.com, and just plunk your name in there, and we'll get in touch with you. And if anybody wants to see anything or talk a little more, we're more than happy to talk.
David, can you put that in the chat before you go?
I'll try.
Okay. All right, thanks a lot.
So somebody can. William, can you do that?
I'll find it, Dave. Thanks
Okay.
so much. I'll find
Someone
it.
already did it. All right,
Awesome.
thank you.
At the very least, we can put it on Front Porch Forum.
Yeah, and Sarah, thanks for all your help over the last week. I know it was a crazy week, but we got through it and got our votes. So thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, good night.
Appreciate it. Monica and Kendra.
Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Ivancic, and I'm the Ward 7 School Commissioner, and I apologize for not being here at the beginning of the meeting.
That's all right.
So today I'm prepared to talk about the school budget, which is measure number 1 on your ballot item. And I'm gonna go through some slides that were presented to the board on January 19th, and we also have a 1-pager. And if I get, Kendra, jump in if I get anything incorrect or you want to clarify additional stuff. So I'm gonna share my screen. Can everybody see this? Essentially, this is the summary of our budget, what we're voting on. And so the budget baseline is the budget, is the money we're using this year. And then we add and subtract from that. And so the baseline budget growth, that includes raises for the teachers, extra money for benefits, debt service on the $70 million bond, etc. That's at 2.8 million. Unfortunately, Burlington taxpayers have to pay for the BHS downtown relocation, and that is at, well, 2.4 million, although subtract 720,000 of that because the state is funding us for the 3.5 million refurbishment. That is almost complete. Our kids are going to be going to school there on March 4th and 5th, and they're moving everything in right now as we speak. The other big, so most of this money here is rent. The other big expense is almost $500,000 for Burlington BTC relocation. And so the district found a reduction of $1 million in operating costs. This is the money that the state is contributing, but you know, it's like they borrow the money and then pay it per year. So it adds up to this for the FY22 budget. And then also the district found 360,000 in cabinet reductions, so reductions in the main office, central office. So the projected budget increase is 3,580,000, which puts our total at 95 million, just a little bit above. And so that is a 3.5% increase from our current budget. And so let me move to.
Can I just make a couple comments as well, Monica? Jump
Yes.
in. So I just want everyone to know that when we started this budget this year, it was a really huge lift. We had, we were looking at a 13% budget increase, which obviously is too high. So 10% of that was about what Monica was just talking about, which was increases to health insurance and wages. You know that health insurance is a big problem for everybody. And so that was a huge amount. And then 3% was the closure of the Burlington Tech Center and the Burlington High School due to PCBs and the relocation. So that 13% was what we started with. And of course, that was not acceptable to us. So we looked for all of the reductions that Monica was just saying. We also identified, in addition to the 1.36 million in reductions, we had a $4 million surplus because of course, when you close schools, you're not heating the schools and there was a lot of savings. So we did take that $4 million surplus and with the reductions that Monica just talked about, and we had a few more that we can talk to you about too. That's how we got to the reductions and to the budget that we're talking about today. So I just wanted to be clear with everybody where we were. And we also got the money from Governor Scott to take away the 720,000 per year, which is 3.5 million total in the fit up costs. So that was good news.
Thank you, Kendra. And I was going to just dive into some of the stuff you mentioned here. So the 2.8 million of the baseline budget growth, including $500,000 of the debt service. Unfortunately, we got to support the bill to move downtown. And then the $500,000 for BTC relocations. And in this 2.8 million is hidden the small increases that we are adding to essentially to our programming. So 120,000 of that is support for our multilingual liaisons that help the district that we rely on heavily to communicate with our non-English speakers and our non-English speaker families. And these liaisons, they are actually more like social workers because they go into the homes of these families and they don't only help them with school-related issues that their children are experiencing or forms for school, but they also help them apply for unemployment, you know, licenses and all sorts of stuff. So, and they get called at all times of the day and even on the weekends. And so currently these multilingual liaisons are on our 9-month, 10-month contract. And for not all of them, we're going to extend the contract to 12-month. And then another 100,000 will be for strategic plan implementation. So right now we're in the 4th year of a 5-year strategic plan, and we are going to be coming up with a new strategic plan. And we wanted to have money available to implement any changes that would be necessary. And Kendra also mentioned the surplus. So the FY20 surplus was a lot larger than in typical years, because I think when we went into the pandemic and kids had to stay home, a lot of the costs with running the schools were reduced. And so we're using just over $4 million of that to reduce the tax impact. And like Kendra said, when we first were, I think in December, the state sent out a letter saying across the state, it's going to be a 9% increase in property taxes, but for places like Burlington, that will be a 13% increase. And so we were able to reduce that down to under 6.88% in taxes. And if let's see, we do have a one-pager that, like, if we were meeting in person, I'd be able to hand these out and each of you could have your own copy. But it is available online on our district website. And essentially, this goes over the money that I was just talking to you about. And so the increase in the total budget is 3.9%. However, the per pupil spending, so the ballot language is here at the top, and you see the 95 million here. The per pupil spending of $17,069.13 per pupil is only a 0.89% increase in spending per pupil. So because of all the factors that factor into how Vermont funds education, this translates to a property tax increase of 6.88%. Or I think most of Burlington has an income sensitized. So we're not paying directly the 6.88% off our properties, but we pay the income sensitized amount. So here are numbers for those other scenarios. So this seems like a large amount. And actually at this point, the state has not set the dollar yield. And likely this number is going to be a bit smaller because of the way the dollar yield works. Another disadvantage is the CLA, common level of appraisals in Burlington. As most of you know, our property values are not appraised. They're way below their actual market values. And so that drives that tax rate up. And so on the second page of this one pager is the explanation how we worked on this budget, how the governor is helping us out by taking 3.5 million, which is the fit up costs for the Mason's buildings to now be able to have the downtown BHS there. And then just lists out the reductions and then the two increases that I discussed. And so Kendra, I don't know, do you have anything more to add?
Yeah, this is really complicated, and the funding is extremely complicated for how we develop a budget. And so I just want to go into a little bit more detail of how our budget goes from a 3.9% increase and how that translates to a 6.88% property tax increase, because I think it's where we all are, it's very confusing. And so there's multiple factors that changes that percent rate. And I think it's important, Monica mentioned one, which is the common level of appraisal. And that, of course, has a upward pressure on our tax rate right now. The second, though, is what happens with our equalized pupils is it goes through these weights. So I'm going to give you an example. So if you consider a high school student, a regular high school student as a 1.0 weight, then the state adds additional weights. So perhaps that student is a student in poverty, or that is a child who is an EL student that has special needs, that comes from maybe a rural school or geographically necessary school is what they call them. So they get additional weights. So they get maybe 1.3. So we know that it costs more to educate kids, okay, who need more resources. So we can understand that. So then the state takes these weights, and that's how we come up with our equalized pupil. So our equalized pupil does not mean the number of students in our district. It's the number of students with this formula, this weight associated with it. These weights have not been updated in 20 years. So what that is doing to Burlington, for example, where we have a lot of English language students and we have children in poverty as well, is that we are actually paying more, right, to educate our children. And we're not getting the amount from the education fund from those weights. So that puts an upward pressure on our taxes. It's an amazing amount of money. And if have created a coalition, I'm spearheading a coalition for the Burlington School Board. And we have a coalition of districts from around Vermont who are equally financially disadvantaged. And we feel that it's an important advocacy role to help put this issue to the forefront and work with our legislators to fix the funding formula. So we really appreciate our local legislators who are helping in this effort, because it is a really big deal. And we take our fiscal responsibility to our taxpayers. We are one extremely seriously, and these taxes are high. And we also want to have equitable educational opportunities for every Vermonter. And right now we feel like these weights are not equitable. And so we are paying more to educate our students. So that is how I feel like it took me a long time to try to understand Vermont's funding and how budgets come. But just, I feel really like we did the best that we could with providing the resources for our students in this, in Burlington, given this funding formula that we're part of. And so I'm really hoping that as a district, we can continue to reach out to our legislators and talk about the need for updating these weights. So that's how it becomes from a 3.9% up to a 6.88%. So I hope that's a little bit helpful. And I hope you know that we're working hard to try to change some of the funding systems, because I am truly an advocate that this needs to be updated, and we need to provide more equity for all of the students in Vermont. So unless, I know we're running out of time and it's almost 9 o'clock. So Monica, are you good if we just open it up for questions?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and Kendra's been doing an amazing amount of work with this, and a lot of this pupil waiting stuff has been in the news as of late.
We still have a room full. Who has a question? Somebody want to raise their hand? Well, people are thinking, I have a question if I could reach out. I've always struggled, and I'm sure everybody can relate to understand when you throw out a statistic of 6.88% increase or 3.9% increase. And I remember a few years back, there was a, don't pass up a good snack, Monica, that looked great. I remember a few years back, there was like a 0.9% increase. It was very, very modest, but it resulted in about a 7% increase because of Act 60 and Burlington's low 80% CLA. So when we're talking about a 6.88% increase, is that factoring the CLA and the Act 60? Or is that equivalent to the 0.9% a couple of years ago, where we might see a 15%?
It is actually factoring the CLA, and I have those that number for you, because for this year, the equalized tax rate increase is 3.08%.
Okay.
Just for the CLA. Last year was 2.3, the year before was 1.7, and I think in 2019 it was 0.21, Matt. So it has increased. And once we do an appraisal of our homes, which I thought was coming up, but I think is coming up, you will see that the actual percent change and go lower for schools, but you're still going to pay the same. It's just it just looks differently in the percent that we're saying. But your taxes, it's supposed to be a zero-sum game. Maybe Sarah can help me with that, but I believe that that is about the purpose. Of course, if your home has really skyrocketed, it won't be exactly the same, but.
Thanks.
Sure.
Actually, reminds me of a future meeting, because I believe that's all work to be done in April. So we might want to invite John Vickery or somebody from the assessor's office to have that conversation. In terms of absolute taxes, there's going to be winners and losers. Some are going to pay more and some are going to pay less. That's really outside the discussion that Kendra's talking about around the weighting formula. There's like probably a whole other meeting on that, but the discussion after reappraisal really is related to the value of your home. The tax rate is related to how much state aid we get from the state, as well as our own baseline expenses.
Thank you, Sarah. I don't see any other questions. Do we have one more?
There's one from Birgit.
So, thank you. So Kendra, just very, very quickly, the obvious question at the end of your presentation for me was, so where do things stand in Montpelier? Is there a legislative vehicle? Is there a hope and heck this session? Where are we?
I mean, I could ask our legislators, maybe Carol could answer that. I mean, there are some bills that we hope, one in particular that we hope will make it to crossover, because of course, you know, the bills have to make it to crossover in order to have a chance this legislative session. So Representative Laura Sibilia has one, and then Phil Baruth had one. So maybe Carol, if you want to speak to that.
There are bills, and I know that my committee on House Ways and Means spends quite a bit of time on this topic. Sorry. There is a lot of talk about how the weights, there's pushback in Montpelier, because there are going to be a lot of towns who will have their rates go up as a result. And then there'll be those of us who would have our rates go down if the weights were to change. So this is to be determined what's going to happen here. I can tell you I'm working very hard, and it's just very hard.
Sounds like a hot potato.
It's hard.
Kendra,
Also, I just want to make one point is I just had a question, maybe not a point, but we secured, the House secured $3.5 million for the retrofit to Macy's.
Yay.
But I didn't understand all the numbers with the 750 and all that. So
We separated the 3.5 out over like 4 years or 5 years in order to make it so that we could afford it as taxpayers. So it was like 720,000 a year based on the budget. That's kind of how we were, because if we didn't get the money, we had to be able to be sure that we could pay it, and it was too much to pay in one.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, that was confusing.
Sorry.
Robert, you raised your hand. Do you have a quick question?
Very, very quick. So like, let's say that my portion of my taxes for the school budget is $1,000. That's just a number I'm pulling out of my butt. But that's going to go up to $1,068 then because of the 6.88 increase. Is that what the net result of the budget question is?
600.
It's hard for us to answer that exactly because your income sensitivity is on a sliding scale.
Right.
So I can't answer that. But you could ask that. I'm sure that you could ask the city clerk's office, or, you know, I just, because of the sliding scale, there's no exact numbers.
On a gross tax.
But we're looking at a 6.88 increase.
Correct.
And somehow we're going to share that 6.88 increase among us.
If you're not income sensitized.
Right.
Okay.
Right. If you are income sensitized, you're not looking at that.
All right.
Yeah.
$68 is
other.
Okay.
Kendra, are other cities in your coalition increasing in similar percentages?
I mean, they're all over the place, I would say. A lot of people, you know, districts, a lot of districts are in crisis at the moment. So yes.
The state predicted a 9% increase on average.
Yeah,
from-
9 to 13% is what the state, but that ended up being a bit high. So the state came back. There was more money that they thought in the fund. So they actually, that was a letter, I think, from maybe December. And then they always, everything's based on estimates in the beginning. So everyone's doing the best they can. And then we get the final numbers. So the numbers were a little bit lower, which we were all appreciative of. And I think, as Monica, you mentioned in the beginning of your talk, it might even be lower still.
It is.
Thank you. Then the 6.8.
It is. It's around 1% or under. And yeah, because sales tax revenue came in very, very high. People purchased quite a bit of goods online and otherwise. And actually, because a couple of years ago, there was a decision, the Wayfair decision, that allows now states to require places like Amazon to collect sales tax. And Vermont immediately enacted legislation. Not all the states have, so that we are collecting that sales tax. Our sales tax revenue is what's pulling us through to go from that December 1st 9% figure to under 1% now. And so that's very good news. I don't know how that's impacting what your number is.
So unfortunately for us, there was a accounting error in the weights. And so when we were building our budget, we built it with that accounting error, which was not in our, it was in our favor before. And so it kind of, the money found from with the sales tax and the education system, and then the correction of the weights means that we're going to be maybe a little bit under what we estimate, but not as much as many communities are now rejoicing in that information, but we're less so, unfortunately. But we aren't going higher, which is good. And this is the other thing that, until I kind of started delving into this, is we build these budgets again based on these estimates. So we don't even know until last minute. And so that is why we say it's estimated at 6.88%, because we cannot give you final numbers. So even the whole process is based on these estimate and last minute information coming in from the state, and they have to look at all the revenue, and that takes time. So we get it. It's just so everybody else knows. So I do hope that you all will support the school budget. And please know that we are doing our best in Montpelier and locally to do what's right for the children and for you, our taxpayers, and we appreciate your support.
And that's why the ballot language doesn't say 6.88% increase. It just talks about the total budget amount and the per pupil spending.
Yes,
because
we don't get
factors that haven't even been determined yet will factor into the increase.
Yes, this is not the ballot language we would use, but it's what we are required to put on the ballot just as well. We're not hiding anything. It's just, that's what it is. So
We are 8 minutes over. I'm happy to go another minute or two if anybody has any more questions. I'm not seeing any hands raised. Kendra, Monica, thank you. Do you have anything to wrap up, or?
I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, your service, and your energy. It's a tough job.
Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Well, we will wrap up our meeting. We thank everybody for their participation, and everybody have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye,
Thank you very
everybody.
much.
Bye.
March.